Okay, so today let's see the top Docker interview questions. Okay, so the first thing is related to architecture and core concepts. Okay, so they may ask you like explain the Docker architecture and how does it differ from virtual machines. Okay, so actually Docker uses client server architecture. Okay, so it will have the components like Docker CLI, Docker engine, and Docker daemon. So Docker CLI is nothing but command line interface, and Docker engine, like when you do systemctl start Docker, the Docker engine will run, and then Docker daemon. Okay, this is required for running the Dockers. Whereas like in VMs, we will have hypervisors and everything, and we should have separate operating system for them. Whereas Docker runs on the shared OS. Okay, and it is lightweight and it will be very fast. Okay, that is the main architecture. Okay, so you have to explain about Docker CLI, Docker engine, and Docker daemon. And then whereas VMs run on hypervisor, whereas Docker runs on the shared OS kernel. That is the main difference. And one more thing, like what are what are Docker namespaces and how do they ensure container is isolated? Okay, so normally we have seen namespaces in Kubernetes, right? So how do we get a namespace in Docker? So actually in Docker, actually it will use the Linux as the namespaces. So what it will do, it will use the Linux kernel that isolates the resources for the container. Okay, so actually key namespaces are like process ID, net, mnt, uts. So all these things are the namespaces. Okay, so based on that, like we will be able to isolate the Docker images. So in case if you are to create a Docker namespace, then you can create it using these Linux processes. Okay, so and then coming to images and containers, like how do Docker caching work during image build? Okay, what is Docker caching? So actually, when we build a Docker image, so multiple layers will be created, right? So Docker run nginx. Okay, so when we just give the command like this, actually it will start downloading the images. Okay, so when it download the image, actually it will find like it will be downloading it in the layers. This is okay, maybe some issue. Okay, so anyway, you guys know. So when we download a Docker image, actually it will download in multiple layers. Okay, so each layer it will create a cache. Okay, so how these caches are created? By using the commands like add and run. Okay, so when you create that cache, so actually when you run the same image next time, then actually those layers which are cached, it will not be created again. So it will use it from the old cache and it will run.
That is doc.
Not Docker pull nginx, it is Docker run. So when we do Docker run, actually it will pull the image and then it will run. In case if we are
So,
directly running, yeah,
okay, we can directly run without pulling it also.
yeah. If you see the command here, so actually I was not able to connect, but it's fine. If you see, when I run Docker run, actually it is unable to find the image. Okay, when it is unable to find the image, it has checked locally. So locally it is not available. So it is trying to download it from Docker Hub. Okay, if you see, is it
Okay.
fine now? Because we don't have the image, but it has locally it has searched the image is not available, and then so it is pulling from library from Docker Hub. Okay, so it has started downloading, right? So this is one layer, this is another layer, this is separate layer. So we have multiple layers. Okay, so for example, next time when you run Docker run nginx, anyway all these layers are already created, right? So it will not try to create the layers again. Okay, it will automatically use the existing layers. If you see, we have multiple layers, so it will start downloading. Okay, so actually it is bit slow. And then how we can see whether particular image is available locally or not? We can use Docker images command. Okay, when you check Docker images, if the image is available locally, then it will be shown here. Otherwise, we have to pull it from outside. Okay. So this is the layers. Okay. So when we use the commands like add and run are cached based on their checksum and ordering. Okay. So actually, what happens here? We this is the layer 1, this layer 2, this layer 3, this layer 4. Okay, but in the next image which we run, in case if we switch this and this layer, then actually it will start in the third layer. If we make changes, it will start building from the third layer. Okay, from for all the remaining components, because till the layer which we have not made any changes, it will not do any changes, because it will use it from the cache itself. Okay. Okay, and then what is multi-stage build in Docker and why is it useful? Okay, so multi-stage build allows you to intermediate images to build artifacts, reducing the final image size. Okay, so what it does, when you do multi-stage builds, actually in the first layer you will use the rich base image, so that the application will be running fine. Later, in the second stage, if you see, we have used alpine. Okay, so alpine, what it is like, it will be the minimal image. Okay, so that your container size will be like very small, so you can use multi-stage to reduce the image sizes. Okay. And networking, so how does Docker network work, and what are the different types of Docker networks? Okay, so Docker has four types of network. One is bridge, host, overlay, and none. Okay, and we can also configure some custom networks. Okay, but containers in a bridge network, okay, when we have bridge network, they will communicate via internal bridge, so they will like communicate internally. But in case if we have to use some Kubernetes services or something like Docker Swarm, then we have to use overlay networks. Okay, so that here they are using Swarm instead of Kubernetes. So overlay, it will be used for communicating between Kubernetes. Okay, and then we have host. Okay, host, it is used for communicating from Docker machine to our local host. And when we give it as none, none of the networks will be available. Okay, so how do you troubleshoot network issues? So for example, you are facing some network issue in Docker containers. So how you can troubleshoot? You can use Docker network inspect. Okay, so when you do Docker network inspect, it will give all the details about that network. And then you can use normal Linux commands like ping and trace route as well to troubleshoot the network issue. Okay, and volumes and storages. So what are Docker volumes, and how do they differ from bind modes? Okay, so volumes are managed by Docker. Okay, so normally it is stored under var lib Docker volume, so this will be the default location. Okay, in case if you're not changing, this will be the default location where the volumes will be mount. Okay, so bin mounts link directories to the host to container. So for example, if we have some directories in the host, it will connect that to the containers. Okay, but are not managed by Docker. So volumes are managed by Docker, but bin mounts are not managed by Docker. We have to officially manage that one. That is the main difference. Okay, so how do you backup and restore Docker volumes? So normally we have to use -v option, and then we can store it in any of the paths. Okay, and then we can tar it. So what they have done, Docker run -rm, what they are removing, they are removing the volume. Okay, and then they are saving it in the backup path. Okay, from there they are converting it into the tar image, and they are saving it locally. So in case if you have to restore, similarly you can take the backup which you have taken, and then you can restore in the particular path. Okay, so we have to define the container and host paths, and then you have to take the backup. Okay, and then coming to security, so how do you secure Docker containers? Okay, so use minimal base image. Okay, so you shouldn't open any of the things, even in organizations, what they do, they don't even allow curl and any network tools or anything, nothing will be allowed. Okay, one second guys. Okay, so in case if you have to secure Docker containers, we have to use the minimal base image. Okay, the base image which we use doesn't shouldn't have any of the tools. Okay, so that in case if it doesn't have any tools, then the users who try to access and do something malicious, they will not be able to do that one. Okay, so always try to go with distroless and enable user namespaces. Okay, when you create namespaces and if you provide proper accesses, then actually they will not be able to access anything. Okay, and then we have to implement the image scanning. Okay, like we have seen trivi and right, so we have to implement the scanning using this aquascan trivi, or else we have something called docker scout. Okay, this is docker related tool, so we can use these things and then we can secure those things. And also we have to use like avoid using this privileged tag. In case if it is necessary we can use, otherwise we should avoid this one. Okay, and what is Docker Content Trust (DCT)? Okay, and how does it enhance security? So actually, we have something called signed images. Okay, so when we go to Docker, um, Docker Hub, so let's search for some image. So if you see here, if you check this Nginx, so if you see we have some seals, okay, and it is mentioned like official build of Nginx, okay. So it is built and managed by Nginx, okay. So what we have to do in case of Docker Trust content trust, we have to use like only signed images are pulled. Okay, so only the signed images, like the in case if we take like Nginx and all, it is officially signed. Okay, so that we will get to know like it is signed by their official company, and then we can use it with confidence, like there will not be any malicious content inside that Nginx images. Okay, so we have to always pull or run only signed images. Okay, so preventing unauthorized image tampering. So in case if we use some unauthorized images, then there may be some unwanted content in it, and it may have they may try to hack, or they may tamper the applications. Okay, so how we can enable that one? We can enable it with Docker content trust equal to 1. So we have to mention this inside the Docker file which we create. Okay, so that the Docker image will be secured. Okay, and then scaling and orchestration. So how does Docker Swarm handle scaling? Okay, so Docker Swarm is nothing but like Kubernetes, but it is of Docker. Okay, so Docker have introduced their own thing called Docker Swarm. So it is like a Docker Swarm automatically distributes the workloads across nodes. Similar to Kubernetes, it will have nodes, and then it will uh, distribute the traffic and load between these nodes. Okay, so that it can like increase the scaling. Okay, since similar to the one in Kubernetes, we use replicas equal to 3 4, right? Like in case if we give replicas equal to 3, it will create 3 replicas of that pod. Similarly, we use replicas to adjust the replicas. Okay, so how do you ensure availability in Docker Swarm? So use multiple manager nodes. So in case if you have to manage high availability, we should have multiple nodes. So that even if one of the node goes down, we can have another nodes where the data will be there, and distribute replicas. Okay, just like Kubernetes replicas, we have to use replicas so that we can distribute the load across nodes. And then we have to use health checks. We use the same thing in deployments, right? So we can define the health checks, and we have to do rolling updates so that all the parts doesn't go down at the same time. Okay, this is how you configure the scaling and orchestration. And performance optimization. Okay, what strategies can you use to optimize Docker image size? Okay, so in case if you are to optimize the image size, so then actually we have to go with smaller base images like Alpine, Scratch we have to use, and combine commands in Docker file to reduce less layers. Okay, we have seen these layers, right? So instead of creating multiple layers, we can merge this layer and this layer together one, so that it will become a single layer. So when we have less layers, actually we can create smaller images. Okay, okay, And we can combine, like as I told, like we have to combine like multiple commands in a single layer, and then we have to clear caches. Okay, we can use apt get and then clean. Okay, so that in case if there is any cache which was created before, those things will be cleared. Okay, and how do you monitor Docker containers performance? So how do you monitor the performance? So normally we can use third party solutions like Prometheus and Grafana to check how the resources are used. Otherwise we have something called Docker stats. Okay, so using that we will be able to check. If you come here, so when we type Docker stats, you see we have two containers. Okay, and then it gives the resources like CPU usage, memory usage, everything will be given here. Okay, so we can use the command Docker stats. Okay, let's close this one. Okay, so using this we will be able to check the performance of the Docker containers. Okay, and CICD integration. Okay, so this is also like important concept. So how can Docker be integrated into CICD? So we have to build and test images. Okay, so we can use Docker build and Docker run in case if you have to test it in the containers, and we have to enable the trivia or aqua scanning, and we have to push the images to registries. Like normally Docker hub it is used for testing. In case of production, you can use some of the repository like ECR, which is provided by AWS, or else in case if you are using a different cloud, we can use based on that. Okay, or else they may also use like Nginx, like sorry, Nginx, not Nginx, it's like JFrog or Nexus. Okay, even those will be used for managing the images, and deploy the containers with tools like Jenkins or GitLab CI. Okay, so you have to integrate the CI/CD pipelines, and then we have to write the pipeline to build and push the artifacts to respective Docker hubs. Okay, and what are the best practices for managing Docker images in CI/CD? Okay, so always tag images. For example, in real time, like you will be creating many images. Like each time you build a run, each time you run a Jenkins pipeline, you will be creating a like a Docker image. Okay, but all those things should be in testing environment. But in case if some stable version is there, you have to tag it properly based on the version, or else in case if you can also use SHA digest. Okay, so SHA digest is nothing but we will get the hash keys, like multiple hash keys, so you can use that to tag the Docker images. Or else the best thing is like going with certain naming convention, and then using some numericals to tag the images. Okay, like v1 1.1 1.2, like that. In case if you have different releases, then you can name it accordingly. Like in case if it is like second iteration, you can name it as 2 dot, and then if it is third iteration, you can name it as 3 dot. Okay, and one more thing is like clean up unused images. Okay, there will be lots of unused images. Okay, so in case if it is not required, you can use Docker image prune, so that you will be able to delete the images like which are not used more, and use primitive registries for sensitive project. Sorry, use private registries for sensitive projects. Okay, instead of creating all the things in public, you should use private registries which will not have access to any other users outside. So what will happen? So only the users who have access in your team will be able to access those things, and your images will be secured. Okay, and troubleshooting. So how do you debug a Docker container that keeps restarting? So normally whenever there is some issue with the Docker containers, you have to check Docker logs. Okay. How we check? You use Docker logs, and then we have to give container ID. Okay. So when we do Docker PS, we will get the container ID, right? So we can give that one. So we will get a big hash, but you can just give 2 3 letters in case if you have limited containers. Okay. And then inspect the exit codes. Okay. You can use Docker inspect. Okay, one is Docker logs for checking the logs, and then Docker inspect. So in case of any exit codes, like in case of 403 forbidden, 200 success, and 500 some gateway errors, so those things can be checked using Docker inspect. Okay. And how do you deal with no space left on device error in Docker? So normally in case if no space left on device, you have to remove unused containers images, mainly images like some old images will be there. You can remove those things. You can use the command Docker system prune. Okay. And in case if you want to get the output with less limited logs, then you can use the command like -log opt, or we can mount the logs to host. Okay, so you can mount all the logs which are not required beyond certain time in the any of the directories. Okay, so that you will be able to see only limited logs. So what is the purpose of Docker init process? So normally in Docker we will have hyphen init flag. So inside the init process we will have something called tiny. Okay. So in case of zombie processes, what is zombie process? The process which is created due to some other process, and it is not necessary. Okay. So in case if you want to handle those zombie processes, then actually you can use init. Okay, so that you will be able to forward the signals, and you will be able to handle the containers. So what is the difference between Docker Compose and Docker Swarm? So Docker Compose, it is like creating an environment with multiple containers. Okay, so manages multiple container setup. Whereas Docker Swarm, it handles container orchestration. So what happens here in multi-container, if the container goes down, okay, in case if the container goes down, we have to manually restart it, or we have to bring it up. Okay, whereas in Docker Swarm, it is similar to Kubernetes. No need of bringing up the parts each and every time if it goes down. Okay, so automatically it will try to create the parts in case if it goes down. Okay, so this is the main difference between Docker Compose and Docker Swarm. So in Docker Compose we will have multiple containers which will be creating an environment. So mostly it can be used for development and testing. When it comes to production, we have to use Docker Swarm or else other Kubernetes services. Okay, so where we can handle the parts like even if they are destroyed or recreated, it will be automatically done using Kubernetes and Docker Swarm. Okay, so these are the main concepts so related to each and every topic. Okay.